Hello everyone and welcome to another recital. Today's recital is the Criterion for Continued Life and Ascension Part 2, Humans and Non-Humans Quarantined and Not Ascending Upon Physical Death, by Mohsen Paul Sarfarazi, Ph.D. Abstract. The discussion regarding the possibility of being privy to experience continued incarnation and possibly ascension after physical death during the present cycle of incarnation has been continued, with particular attention to those of humans and non-humans who have needs for expedited life lessons leading to their consciousness expansion. In particular, this discourse pertains to the greatest majority of the present inhabitants of Earth who have proclivity to either negative or positive polarity. In this respect, three groups of individuals are identified that include, number one, those highly plagued by Luciferism, who are categorized as having strong inclinations to negative polarity. Number two, a second group composed of souls who, although need extensive life lessons as a result of being predisposed to negative polarity with the residual effects of anger and unresolved issues, still are not considered as malevolent and a source of liability to others. And number three, a third group comprised of individuals with somewhat overzealous predisposition who have acquired negative aliens' dogma of belief system with strong tendencies for materialism and lust for gluttonous excess, who are separated from the acumen of their inner soul spirit. This discussion ends with a concluding remarks pertinent to the humanity's experience with the negative aliens throughout their entire course of creation. Introduction. Consequence of having fallen victims under the tyrannical rule of negative aliens. Human beings have been long pursued and harassed by a horde of reptilians and their cohorts, collectively referred as to negative aliens, and plagued by being dragged into many galactic wars. In actuality, human beings were created as a highly special species of beings within the Nebadon universe to safeguard against any future possibility of annihilation by a way of having no alternative but to close or collapse the universe as an organically inhabitable plane of existence. Nebadon, our universe, by comparison, is a somewhat newly formed and seeded universe that was relatively shortly thereafter its establishment invaded by a horde of parasitic, vampiric, negative aliens. As a result, the guardian founders of our universe, who co-created and seeded this universe, decided to create humanity as a new race of Christos angelic beings, potentially orphan beings with a remarkable 12D crystalline silica-based DNA structure, capable of serving a storehouse for preserving the genetic records of all beings within the Nebadon universe. Accordingly, 12 of the Christos angelic orphan from the higher superuniverses, the higher heavens, each donated one of their DNA strands to form a prototype tyrannism for the new race of human beings. After several trials of trying to embody the human consciousness in physical realms, namely the first avatars in the fourth harmonic universe, then within the 7D Gaia in the third harmonic universe, they finally created the human prototype on 5D Tara within the second harmonic universe. It was envisioned that this new race of angelic beings will start becoming embodied on the 5D Tara with only 5 of their assembled 12 DNA strands activated and experimented with the sojourns of life via the divine holographic programs of relatively streamed upon them to choose wisely in order to consciously evolve by a way of progressively activating the rest of their 7 DNA strands and climb the 12D grid or tree of life matrix of reality in the Nebadon universe to acquire the status of full crystalline Christ consciousness and eventually take on the guardianship of the entire Nebadon universe. This created an enormous amount of envy and resentment, then created reptilian negative aliens by their invading ancestors, the Carians, exasperated by the fact that now these nefarious beings, huge human beings, has proverbially thorns in their sides, in their strive to someday conquer, plunder, enslave the entire inhabitants of the Nebadon universe and eventually rule as supreme local gods. As a result, there has always been a nefarious scheme by the reptilian negative aliens motivated by divide and conquer strategy to divide humans via warmongering, engaging in conflict and wars amongst themselves. By divine nature, human beings are ordinarily predisposed to unity consciousness as a significant provision of the law of one, via quantum entanglement through God's service. And united we are strong, and divided we fall. There is something that the reptilian negative aliens are very much aware of. This is something that the negative aliens are very much aware of. This is why the humans have always been plagued with being subject to calamities of many wars, be it through galactic wars with the negative aliens or by a way of fighting amongst themselves. And the consciousness memories of these wars that have always been brought extreme pains, sufferings, and miseries have been intensely devastating for the human beings, with the residual effects of leaving severe traces of anxieties, fears, and dreads, leading to seemingly permanent state of psychosis and neurosis in many individuals. Furthermore, the ramification of these terrible subconscious memories have been such that over the course of futile reincarnations after reincarnations, these memories have come to haunt human beings with a deep sense of anger, leading to recurring violence, absurd prejudices, and such, culminating in pointlessly fighting amongst themselves over and over again. And the subconscious memories of one war has led to the advent of a new war within a different timeline of reality. As if this was not enough, through advancing and further devising and constructing their nefarious AI infrastructure, the negative aliens have learned to holographically record the devastating consciousness memories of human beings effectuated via many galactic wars and generate new phantom timelines that are subsequently played back and streamed upon on humanity as holographic inserts. This, facilitated by the rerouting human souls through the astral plane to continuously undergo repeated cycles of death and rebirth through futile reincarnations, provided seemingly perpetual means for the negative aliens to continuously harvest loosh from human beings by subjecting them to the same programs of phantom reality, inundated with the same impulses that lead to self-destructive reality for human beings. With the added painful war-infested memories from other timelines that incite nothing but anger, violence, absurd prejudice, and other futile impulses as to again engage in useless wars among one another, the negative aliens' nefarious agendas were more successfully carried out to the best of their content. And this was successfully achieved or fulfilled according to their nefarious agendas because human beings were always maintained in the sleeper state of unconsciousness or unawareness as to what was transpiring through their blank slating, mind wiping prior to reincarnation, and subsequently through mind controlling, mind sliding while reincarnated. Thus, the result of the whole calamitous outcome of creating dreadful sufferings and pains as well as killings have been quite fruitful to the desires and needs of negative aliens by a way of producing much sought after low frequential essence of consciousness or loosh, upon which the negative aliens thrive to survive as energetically parasitic vampiric creatures, adding to their longevity instead of having to self-consume. However, all this was achieved at the expense of human beings undergoing through extensive negative karma, due to engaging in a wide variety of self-destructive behaviors such as mind-controlling impulses that led to sexual misery, thus providing a viable, potent form of loosh for negative aliens. Homicides, a form of bloodlust, providing another form of potent loosh for them, as well as addictions of various kinds such as materialism, greed, ego selfishness, false pride, and narcissism, futile competition, jealousy, excessive physical self-indulgences such as lust, gluttony, slouch, as well as anger. And these constitute what is collectively devised by the reptilian negative aliens as mind control programming factor, which are commonly referred to as the 7 cardinal sins. And apart from extreme addiction to materialism and distasteful and unacceptable lust, there are other repugnant derailed trends or bad, sad habits that humanity has become predisposed to as a result of manipulation or control by negative aliens that include narcissism, elitism, patriarchal domination, misogyny, absurd prejudice, even eugenics, and oppressive, suppressive need for controlling others. All these highly offensive, repulsive, and disgusting hang-ups that are directly against the provisions of the law of one must cease to exist and expunged from the mind of humanity as bad, sad habits, with the strive to never, ever be practiced again, if humanity is to ascend to higher dimensions of consciousness by the very virtue of vibrational resonance. Apart from the negative karma generated as a result of negative aliens, reverse consciousness, and NARC, the AI machinery has left a multitude of energetic wastes, miasma, in the consciousness field of Earth and humanity. That apart from aging, myriads of generated diseases, eventually leading to physical death of consciousness embodiment of humanity, it has left some deleterious results in the DNA structure of human beings. This has also been exacerbated by means of deliberate attempts by the reptilian negative aliens to change the genetic structure of humanity via introduction of various genetic mutations, as well as alien hybridization, efforts in the hope of forever annihilating human beings as a viable source and a genetic storehouse of information for all organic consciousness beings within the Nebulon universe. In particular, the problem of black goo, having adhered to the DNA structure of human beings, has been a major problem that could only be resolved via the participation and cooperation of aurora light beings from the higher universes to join the ascension efforts. Being of extremely high frequential energetic, the aurora light constitutes a form of liquid crystalline plasma that is capable of dissolving black goo on the spot, akin to acid dissolving metal. However, its use could only be achieved in a slow and progressive manner, as obviously the black goo that constitutes a distorted form of allotropes of carbon, referred to as buckyballs, perceived as the AI elemental, bonds itself to the DNA of human beings. Accordingly, being of lower frequential consciousness energies, the dark matter core manifestation, consciousness embodiment of 3D humans cannot itself take such high frequency if a highly potent amount of liquid plasma aurora light is suddenly bombarded upon the human body substrate. In other words, although human DNA is not strange to the aurora light, as a result of its step-down version to carbon-based structure, it is not able to create a considerable amount of high frequential plasma light at once. And any effort to re-encrypt and recalibrate the morphogenic structure of the human body and its DNA must be carried out in stages and at relatively smaller dosage at a time. This is why the process of re-encryption and recalibration of human DNA and its gradual conversion to silicate-based matrix will take time to achieve. At the same time, human psyche and consciousness must be able to resonate with such high frequential vibrations, which signifies that humanity must first attain adequate consciousness expansion in order to evolve into a pure state of eventual full crystalline consciousness. At the same time, the miasmic state of consciousness fields of Earth has provided a means for many negative and dark forms to develop that include, but are not limited to, dark spirits, demons, as well as parasites. Examples: suppressor parasitic entities, SPEs, and courtesy of the Mother Ark that ordinarily organically process material based upon its law of structure. The Mother Aqua Ray Vortex is currently systematically neutralizing the negative aliens, toxic energetic waste fields, and miasma residues that have been formed as a result of their usage and operating their AI-based consciousness reversal infrastructure. Recap of the effects of negative aliens' reverse consciousness technology on human beings. Perhaps the most fundamental, devastating effect of the negative aliens' mind-controlling, mind-sliding technology via the holographic inserts on humanity has been effectually separating or disconnecting humanity from its inner or future higher self and its parent spirit that ultimately epitomizes the excessively deflecting away from God's source. Furthermore, through nefarious use of such AI technologies as the imposition of frequency fences, genetic implants in humanity's bioorganic field, it has particularly deprived humanity from experiencing multidimensional consciousness and consciousness expansibility, by way of ensuring that the higher quantum energetic particle accelerators referred to as the chakras never open their seals, leading to the activation of our higher DNA strands, effectuating consciousness expansion, into higher dimensional consciousness, leading to forward transmigration of consciousness into higher harmonic universes, resulting in ascension. Therefore, this implies that it has negated the process of sacred marriage or hieroskamis of the spiritual twin selves, experiencing diverse sojourns of life within worlds of matter and antimatter, even occurring, leading to inner gender polarity integration and reintegration of the human soul fragments. This also in turn signifies that for all practical purposes, the most unique feature of human consciousness embodiment as the technological marvel and the crown jewel of all never dawn creations, that is the Merkaba light field vehicle, has been in a state of total atrophy, preventing any form of transmigration by a way of time travel or teleportation to other vectors of space, times, or dimensions even occurring. However, by comparison, the features of multidimensionality and consciousness expansibility or evolution and ascension have been the least of the atrocities that have been befallen on humanity by the nefarious negative aliens. To name a few, it is the problem of developing genetic mutations, various genetic damages, alien hybridization, and such that are of much more concern. Of course, humanity has been constantly subject to extreme pains, sufferings, and miseries, which over a course of a single reincarnation has been manifesting as aging, procuring many different types of diseases, leading to physical death, manifested by either damping of its frequential light energies or its total extinguishment. And on a more fundamental level, it's been plagued with psychosis and neurosis with respect to enduring the negative inclinations to anger, violence, conflict, and warring endeavors, as well as a slew of addictive and self-destructive tendencies that has been mostly devastating in terms of preventing humanity to thrive as a progressive, consciously developing or evolving organic consciousness life form, and conversely being utilized as a farm animal or a consciousness energetic battery or generator. And perhaps most alarming is the fact that humans, being viewed as creatures of habit, have picked up utterly morally and spiritually questionable predispositions that have formed the basis for their societal structure that include patriarchal domination, misogyny, narcissism, elitism, oppressive, suppressive, tyrannical behaviors, as well as unrefined, clever traits of deception, lies, paltering, etc., and as now are generally commonplace among the human culture, or lack of it. Accordingly, upon the dawn and arrival of the present ascension cycle, the Guardian founders are taking all proper measures to eventually solve the problems of miasma, diseases, aging, even physical death, as well as correcting the problem of genetic mutations and alien hybridizations, such as via the purging of the black goo from the human morphogenic system. However, while organic consciousness is a gift bestowed upon our angelic humans, its maintenance and acquiring consciousness expansion requires effort that necessitates the active participation of embodied human beings via striving for attaining spiritual education, enlightenment, usually obtained via proper experimentation in space-times and experiencing the sojourns of life via holographic reality through making wise choices. Accordingly, during the next cycle of ascension, while the consciousness field is being cleared and cleansed of miasma, and the black goo being the primary culprit for genetic mutations and alien hybridization is being eradicated, it remains that humanity learns to change its ways by paying proper and focused attention to the requisites provisions of the Law of One, advent of the unitary consciousness and connectedness, compassion, empathy, unconditional love, service to others. In order to have a chance for continued incarnation and consciousness vibration life, hopefully sooner or later, leading to its expansion, evolution, and ascension to the higher planes of consciousness. Accordingly, even as it were, the consciousness field of humanity would be fully cleared of toxic energetic waste on miasma, miraculously and at once, also entailing the total eradication of all forms of dark matter, dark energy, demons, parasites from the reality of humanity, so that nothing would ever negatively feed upon humanity, as well as all our genetic mutations and negative alien hybridizations would be cleared out, rendered essentially a totally rebooted consciousness field, and utterly revitalized embodied form, closely reflecting the condition of living afresh within a newly created God world, absence of any negative alien machinery and its nefarious technological aspects such as mind control, mind sliding, holographic inserts, frequency fences, and living without any genetic implants and such. There is still the crucial question of self-responsibility and self-accountability to consider. Thus, the question of allowance of continued incarnation, perpetually living life with the possibility of future ascension, would require active participation of a solar organic consciousness being, such as a human, in striving to attain consciousness expansion and evolution via taking appropriate self-responsibility, self-accountability measures in order to effectuate a prosperous spiritual career, ultimately leading to ascension. Accordingly, considering the present consciousness status of the greatest majority of human earthlings and even possibly non-humans elsewhere, it may be concluded that the consciousness population of Earth and alike can be divided into the following possible categories. Group 1, humans and non-humans with inclination towards Luciferism and extreme negative polarity. This group is composed of humans and non-humans currently incarnated on Earth who do not have any love or kindness for others, with inclination towards extreme negative polarity. However, this group is composed of individuals who are neither negative aliens nor genetically hybridized as the reptilian lineages as cabals, example Illuminati, nor have direct ties with them through, for example, having climbed their hierarchical pyramidal societal structure by engaging in satanic rituals and such. This group is comprised of souls who knowingly or unknowingly pay homage or subscribe to the dogma of Luciferianism by way of strongly advocating male supremacy, in line with the negative aliens' dogma of patriarchal domination and misogyny, who are plagued with strong traits of religious, racial, ethnic prejudice, who often display episodes of anger, violence, terrorism, conflict, warlike mentality. Among these individuals are those who engage in human trafficking, such as child prostitution and pedophilia, with strong sexual abuse towards children as well as women, and constantly engaging in all forms of crimes against humanity that include killing, drug trafficking, and related questionable trades, who also have a tendency to be physically and mentally abusive and victimizers of others with oppressive, suppressive, tyrannical behaviors resembling those of negative aliens and the cabal. These individuals are the remnants of some hideous and nefarious left over on Earth after negative aliens who still subscribe to the similar dogma of questionable conducts as the negative aliens. Prominent examples include, but not limited to, those who are parents, teachers, clergymen, women who engage in sexual abuse, pedophilia, and become victimizers of others without mercy or hint of sense of values, who are void of compassion, empathy, love, kindness for others, who utterly have disrespect for the right, free will, and sovereignty of others. But it's because they are apathetic to others or because they were once themselves victims. And psychopathic individuals who, without any sense of value, played with strong soul fragmentation, suffering from psychosis and neurosis of various kinds. Accordingly, after the conclusion of their present term of incarnation, if through the collapse of the negative aliens' nefarious infrastructure on Earth, and as a result of return of the loving mother principle and her energetics to Earth, they do not find a hint of compassion, empathy, love, or service to others in their heart by showing respect for the right of sovereignty of others and organic living things, they will not have an option for future incarnation or further incarnation or continued life in the future. Accordingly, upon termination of their current physical life, their remaining consciousness quanta of energy shall be absorbed via the Mother Ark and returned to the God Source for revitalization and recycling to be further utilized as raw materials, giving life to other new souls. Thus, they will forever perish physically, also losing their consciousness identity, never to be incarnated on Earth or anywhere else for that matter. Group 2. Humans, starseeds, and indigos with the predisposition towards negative polarity. Alternatively, this group might be identified as possible initiates or candidates for the soul matrix, second harmonic universe advancements in the future. Those plagued with residual negative issues originating from the negative aliens, including patriarchal domination, misogyny, narcissism, elite elitism based upon hierarchical societal structures, prejudice of all kinds, religious, racial, social, gender, who are victims of anxiety and fear with tendency for anger and violence, terrorism, war mentality, and judgmental traits, need to resolve these negative polarity tendencies before being a candidate as a soul matrix initiate, whatever possibility of ascending to the second harmonic universe in the future. Those with negative karma inundated with anger issues, victims of soul fragmentation, plagued with psychosis, neurosis, those with other issues regarding the 7 cardinal sins, including negative ego, envy, greed, redundant or repugnant, excessive carnal desires, and lust and sloth, have the same lessons to master before any possibility of being considered for future ascension or even continued life through incarnation. As was indicated before, there are those among 3D humans who are prone to negative polarity that has resulted because of being long victimized by negative aliens. Having been through numerous galactic wars with negative aliens, as well as mind control through AI machinery to engage in conflict and wars amongst themselves. Thus, there are individuals who have been left with traces of negative inclinations such as inner anger, prejudice, violent tendencies. In fact, there are also those who have been plagued with psychosis and neurosis, being victims of deep subconscious memories of war involving the killings of their loved ones and having been subject to extreme inner fears, dreads, and anxieties that have left traces of strong anger with religious, racial, or ethnic prejudice that subconsciously compel them to engage in hatred, conflict, violence, and even wars against one another. Some of these individuals even have a modicum of loving tendencies and heart-based feelings when they are not plagued with such anger and prejudices. Yet severe trauma and abuses of past perpetuated against them have resulted in their soul fragmentation, practically not knowing how they feel at times, making them almost not responsible for their actions, as otherwise they can be very loving and kind to others. In addition, and further and more close to our time period, there are those who've been abducted by the military, the MILAB victims, Grey and Zeta aliens, even having alien implants or have been hybridized with the reptilian and other negative alien genes, and or have been subjected to satanic ritual abuse while on Earth. These individuals particularly need more time and loving attention to recover from such severe traumas perpetuated upon them. More specifically, they need deeper lessons to start comprehending the ramifications of their severe traumatic histories and review their experiences through compassionate witnessing and replaying those moments that, as a painful and dramatic of a treatment it may seem, they would eventually bring a sense of unconditional forgiveness to them to affect their soul healing. They say that time heals, and a loving attitude is clearly the impetus that is needed to remedy or heal such severely traumatic experiences. On the positive side, it needs to be stated herein that under the traditional tyrannical rule and consciousness enslavement, imposed by the negative aliens upon humanity. Consistent mind control programming via AI holographic inserts and such have been the main stumbling block to effect any form of natural healing in such individuals. However, with the collapse of the negative aliens' AI mind controlling infrastructure, and with the added advantage that these human beings, no matter how victimized they are, being souls who have the inner divine potential of being the crown jewel of solar organic consciousness beings, they have inherent loving kindness and capability for unconditional forgiveness to effect their soul healing in the near future. In particular, with the advent of the return of the Divine Mother Principle on Earth and her loving magnetic energies, there is more opportunity for exercising loving kindness through effectuating higher propinquity towards the God Source, who is the epitome of love, kindness, and forgiveness. Thus, with attending certain lessons of love, kindness, and forgiveness, and through their effectuate application, it should be fairly straightforward via the presence of Mother Ark, loving energies, and indeed the absence of prior stumbling blocks put in front of us by the negative aliens. To heal one's astral heart and to effectively switch tendency from negative to positive polarity. Such healing of the soul and the heart is envisioned to inevitably lead one towards the path of acquiring and practicing unconditional love as well as service to others, which are the prerequisite for ascension to even higher dimensions of consciousness than the second harmonic universe. Accordingly, the individuals in Group 2, as cited above, will have an opportunity to incarnate once again on another Earth-like planet for acquiring that much needed lessons in order to heal their accumulated negative karmic energies, refraining from their negative polarity that will direct them towards learning to love and show kindness to others once again. And those souls incarnated on Earth or otherwise who were initially of non-human origins during the 3-day Bardo process regarding death transition of the body will return to their home planet or galaxy to heal and integrate their soul mission, which can then return to future Earth 5D Tara for further consciousness development and consequent ascension to higher dimensions upon satisfying the required conditions then. Having a loving heart and developing a sense of compassion and empathy for others directs one towards developing an appreciation for the acumen of unity consciousness that is effectuated through connectedness to one's inner soul spirit, and gives ready access to one's higher dimensional aspects, expressions, or higher self, and ultimately the God Source. And this paves the way for later ascending to the higher dimensional consciousness. Example, the second harmonic universe. However, until then, the soul matrix initiates will remain in a state of quarantine before ascension could be achieved. And in order to have the condition of quarantine removed, one must learn about one's bioenergetic system and the concept of the soul triad, as well as to learn about service to others. In particular, there is a genetic implant imposed upon 3D Earth humans referred to as the 2-4 split. This so-called 2-4 split represents a form of genetic block from humanity introduced within the last cycle of ascension via the Anunnaki through interbreeding with humans, leading to our genetic hybridization and DNA digression. Accordingly, the Nephilim hybrids of humans and Anunnaki, who became the carriers of this genetic block, due to the Anunnaki's utter disregard for the provisions of the Law of One that epitomized the natural laws of God, started to contaminate humans to follow the same trends or dogma of beliefs and behaviors. This genetic block, in the form of removal of certain DNA tones, created a type of dual identity at the 2D and 4D levels that represent the unconsciousness aspects of human soul, referred to as the shadow selves, akin to the creation of human genetic or DNA digression. This was, of course, carried out in order to subject humans to enslavement via genetic manipulation, which over the course of the years led to more human genetic distortions, digressions, and hybridizations to the point that it's began to create shadow selves. This represents a splitting of the physical layers of the human body, elementals dividing the upper and the lower aspects of human subconsciousness identities, with the latter being confined to the astral plane. In time, the shadow cells and dark fragments in the astral layers of the human soul matrix began to create miasma in the personal and planetary levels. This is what is commonly referred to as the pain body. The 2D shadow cells represent as series of fragmented aspects of human soul, a collection of separate subpersonalities, each having a different function according to the human soul memories. Accordingly, the 2D shadow selves represent a collective of chaotic forces driven by personal emotional energies. The 4D rift or split represents a faction or division of the soul aspect that placed a barrier in the nadial system, separating the heart chakra from merging with 3D solar plexus and the mental body. This essentially restricts and reroutes the soul to the astral plane, the lower fourth dimension, for futile reincarnation and recycling back to the 3D earth plane. It is as if there is a false umbilicus attached to the human soul, perpetually redirecting it to the astral plane for reprocessing, and being always strictly redirected to the lower fourth dimension of the astral plane. The lower bodies are always blocked from communication with the elemental kingdom that resides in the middle of the fourth dimension. Accordingly, this also deprives humanity from effectively communicating with nature and elemental kingdom via physically or bodily consciousness. So not only are you separated from the higher functions of the soul matrix, you are deprived from effectively feel the natural kingdom and communicate with its elementals. Note that no matter what extraterrestrial race have conquered the territory of Earth and claimed it as their own, and no matter how much they tried to damage and reverse its holographic consciousness mechanics infrastructure, the planet Earth still remains as a true creation of the original progenitor, God's source, or its guardian founder delegates. The many dimensional layers in the Earth's auric body are the container for the entire collective consciousness on the planet. These include stargates, various portals, the Earth grid, the ley lines, accisional lines, pardon me, I get tongue-tied sometimes, pardon me, making various Earth grids. A stargate is a vortex of energy wave spectrum that connects into multiple other dimensions within the universal time-space matrix. Stargates are an organic part of the mechanics of creation and function as the core manifestation temple of universal creation, which is the holographic architecture called the 12D tree grid. There are 12 original planetary stargates. The main planetary stargates open in the galactic and universal stargates, and at the end of the evolutionary cycles, these were sealed off by the Guardian founder races due to severe damage and control by the negative alien races. This formed a kind of quarantine on Earth in which stargates could not be used by the lower consciousness beings to transmigrate and contaminate higher dimensions. The holographic constructs of the Earth grid forms the basis for the energetic architecture of the Earth's consciousness body, and how this structure creates the many realities and time fields. These structures hold the content of all the consciousness that manifest into the many different kingdoms and species that exist on the Earth. The planetary chakra system, or the stargates, acts to step down the higher energies transmitting from the source field into the sun, which is then directed into many stargates. The stargates transmit an energetic spectrum of frequencies moving from the higher to lower dimensions in order to reach the matter fields and circulate them throughout the planetary grid network. Stargates create spirals of these energies, which are designed on frequency scale to circulate the God source energy into reciprocal exchanges with multiple dimensions of creation. The frequency scale of these spirals of energies feed into the manifested realms of space-time, returning back into the center point of the feedback loop, the 0 point field, just thus returning to unite with the God source field. The planetary stargate that receives the transmission of the source field for distribution into the rest of the planetary grid system is the Grail point. The transmission of the intergalactic plasma waves into the Grail point originates from the source field. These physical and etheric structures hold the point of origination for all collective consciousness energy that was originally seeded onto the planet and entered the material realm from the Grail point. The Grail point is located within the planet's second dimensional stargates, with its primary access within Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And the planetary stargates is greatly accelerating now. In order to enforce the astral splitting, the negative aliens designed their own physical and etheric structures, referred to as minarets, to hold and run reversal frequency, creating a network or grid system through multiple dimensions. And one of the most significant of these reversal systems, it imposes the reversal 1010 current, is the Iran gate, the alias 10 Templar Stargate. In particular, a massive multi-dimensional battle was waged in the Jerusalem area, with the dark power being directed from the complex minaret connected network grid system that had extensive foothold in 2D and 4D planetary gates being rooted in the Earth core. Many of the manipulation of Earth's timelines occurred in 2D Stargate, and the Earth was core hijacked via the Iran gate, the planetary grid, golden grid system that also runs the fourth Stargate in Giza, that also runs the fourth Stargate in Giza, Egypt. Extensive genocide and killing broadcasts are used repeatedly to manipulate the masses. We've seen this warring in the Middle East repeatedly as a mirror to the alien manipulation. Note that all planets, many religions have suffered from serious alien hijack. This problem in the Middle East only represents one such example among many. It is all part of the negative aliens' reverse consciousness, mind control technology that imposes violent mind sliding programs of hypocrisy and superstition, leading to conflicts and wars that serve the negative aliens' divide and conquer strategy, with dreadful memories of war as a result of futile killings and numerous forms of devastation that also incite the problem of the victimization, with many victims of war that hold grudges to become victimizers during this or future courses of reincarnation. However, recall that within the next course of incarnation, there will be no longer any mind control, as well as was previously imposed by the negative aliens, as well as full disclosure with regard to relief from a status of unconsciousness imprisonment. Accordingly, the whole process must take in place with ease and in expedited fashion. Particularly the guardian founders are seeing to it that we develop consciously much faster to compensate for thousands and thousands of years of having been condemned to unconscious enslavement by the negative aliens. However, if there is no significant development in one's state of healing leading to expanded consciousness, the individual soul remains continually in a state of quarantine, not being able to transmigrate to higher dimensions. And if the state of positive polarity is not achieved in the soul, with the soul further regressing towards more negative polarity, the soul's privilege for continued incarnations will be stricken away, negating any possibility for the continued life or ascension. Accordingly, the individual soul will be absorbed by the mother arc for revitalization and soul recycling involving other new soul identities. Group 3. Humans, starseeds, indicos with proclivity towards positive polarity. The great majority of the negative ego inherent in the collective consciousness that is observed in the human race on Earth today is a product of negative alien interference through mind control. And although this alien infrastructure and its enslavement functions that impair the mind, principle, and consciousness are being removed, repaired, and rehabilitated, it remains true that humans are creatures of habits. In other words, there are many generations of people that have become interdependent on these alien structures of mind control, believing that these false edifices define who they are. Accordingly, many humans have inherited dysfunctional belief systems and behaviors through their biological families and cultural programming. Some of these are inundated with thought process feelings, pardon me. I'll do that one again. Apologies. Some of these are inundated with thought process and feelings that are deeply based in fear and hate, surfacing as anger, violence, and such that create proclivity to negative polarity, as described before, giving rise to groups 1 and 2. Humans are categorized and presented beforehand. On the other hand, there are those individuals who do not have tendencies towards negative polarity, yet they've adopted some form of dogma, of beliefs of the negative aliens that have become a form of habit to them and directly their consciousness reality. It is hoped that this programming would eventually evolve through a die-off process in the longer term, rebooting patterns of thought and beliefs and consciousness reality of the human beings in the future. We know that in the death process, this may be transformed into something fertile, where new consciousness growth can take place, then life is renewed. The incredible violence that is going on today is a result of a process of death transition in the old paradigm of reality, that is the death of the negative ego. In this discourse, the possible future of certain individuals will be considered who do not suffer from psychosis, neurosis, nor do not have predisposition for futile inner anger, violence, conflict, or warlike conducts, or something that may be construed as a strong and even modicum negative polarity. These individuals classified are those who are stricken with positive polarity, or what may be described as a positive ego, who are actually typified as being somewhat overzealous, highly ambitious individuals who are nevertheless plagued with human ego, who crave for distinction and somewhat elitist status, instead of thriving for a love of simply enriched with love of nature or organic living. Accordingly, this group of individuals, classified as group 3, are composed of souls who still in service to self, who are actually highly materialistic, even inundated with greed, lust for greediest excess, who are also somewhat of selfish nature and form false self-pride. More importantly, these individuals do not often engage in spiritual endeavors or anything that exude true charity or much compassion or empathy for others. And what is most poignant about them, that they are totally oblivious about the ascension process or their inherent need for attaining their consciousness expansion. And since they are so much mesmerized with materialism and bewildered about and engaged in the acclamation of nice and better said frivolous things, they have a minimum amount of loving kindness towards others. As a result, instead of showing compassion or empathy to others, they are actually of very competitive nature, who often engage in judging others rather harshly without even having much awareness of their dispositions. In particular, these individuals must learn about the nature of their inner existence, getting better acquainted with their soul spirit in order to start understanding the concept of collective consciousness as opposed to separate consciousness that describes their reality. This will hopefully guide them towards better appreciating the acumen of unity consciousness that will guide them to more towards unconditional love and service to others. Thus, the remainder of their time on earth will be receiving lessons that will direct them towards letting go of their personal egoic needs and lust for frivolities that is mainly governed by futile materialism and accumulation of things, and instead pay a modicum of attention to serve the needs of others. At the moment, they have a choice to incarnate on another Earth-like planet upon physical death and completion of the term of their current reincarnation, in which they can work on lessons of selflessness that will ultimately determine the path for their ascension. And some souls in this group who are of positive Anuki Nephilim families will be claimed by their family to return to their home planet. This future incarnation will be carried out under the state of quarantine as noted before, which can only be removed upon their readiness to ascend in the future by way of attaining adequate consciousness expansion, and when the lessons of compassion, empathy, unity consciousness, and the acumen of unconditional love and service to others are well digested and become a way of life deeply ingrained in their consciousness reality. Again, it's envisioned that in the absence of negative aliens mind controlling, mind sliding programming, and having full disclosure with respect to their consciousness reality and affairs, the whole process of working towards ascension can progress in a highly smooth and expedited manner. In contrast, if the individual will not cooperate with their ascension plan and instead digress in polarity into a state of negative polarity, ascension will not occur. And in the extremely dire and unfortunate circumstance that the individual digresses excessively towards negative polarity, becoming a liability towards consciousness, expansion, progression of others, or engaging in violating the right of free will and sovereignty of others, his or her privilege for future incarnations and continued life will cease to exist, and the individual losing its consciousness identity by way of becoming subject to absorption of the mother arcs as raw material, as noted before. Closing remarks. The Nebadon universe was devised and seeded as God's world. However, a horde of highly aggressive, violent, warring, vagrant, negative aliens who were chased out and exiled from higher heavens invaded and contaminated the divine realm of Nebadon like infectious viruses with the incredibly narcissistic, oppressive, suppressive, tyrannical attributes who wanted to play local gods, ruling this new realm through invasive conquest without any virtues or constraints, totally defying and opposing the provisions of the law of one, pillaging and plundering and preying upon others, even resorting to harvesting the consciousness energies of its inhabitants as parasites and vampires. As a result, the guardian founders of the co-creators of Nebadon, who have seeded our universe, decided to create humans as a consciousness embodiment of the God source, as angelic Christos beings, with their 12D strand crystalline silica-based DNA, serving the storehouse of the genetic records of this new universe in order to safeguard this new realm from someday annihilation as a result of a horde of parasitic vampiric invaders. Accordingly, the angelic humans did not have a chance of experiencing consciousness embodiment within the fourth harmonic universe, physical realm of the Nebadon as avatars, as the negative aliens first proceeded to annihilate the triad stargates in the cradle of civilization, that is referred to as Lyra, by destroying its 12th Arimatena, 11th Avion, and 10th Vegas gates. In fact, it seems as if the advent of creation of human beings became the proverbial thorn in the sides of these negative aliens. So with deep sense of hatred, envy, and resentment for humans, the reptilian negative aliens set their mind to chase and eventually annihilate or reverse the unique consciousness of the human beings as the crown jewel of the organic solar sentient beings. Accordingly, the seeding of humans on 7D Gaia and third harmonic universe was also met with strong opposition and belligerent, assertive, antagonistic response by way of negative aliens waging new galactic wars. And when finally the prototype of the human race, tyrannism, came to fruition on 5D Tara within the second harmonic universe, still the reptilian negative aliens meddled in the embodied consciousness experience of the humans through divide and conquer strategy of warmongering and persuading one group of humans with ambition and narcissistic proclivity, the aliens, to go against one another, the Lumians, who were highly spiritual, peaceful beings, and the devout followers, advocates, and upholders of the provisions of the law of one. As a result, due to the misuse of the potent underground crystals of Tara, the core and the consciousness grids of Tara exploded, scattering and congealed the quantum particles of its core, and the free-flowing consciousness quanta of its grid falling to the first harmonic universe through the Sun gateway, eventually reconstituting and forming the planetary system of our solar system, establishing Earth as the 3D realm of fragmented step-down plane of consciousness with pronounced gravitational density. Soon after, the negative aliens conquered the territory of Earth and put its inhabitants into a state of consciousness enslavement governed by artificial intelligence, AI, alien machinery. Thus, Earth humans became caught in a web of phantom reality, inundated with mind-controlling, mind-sliding programs of reality as holographic inserts. Added the complication of devising a new AI frequency fences and genetic implants to keep humanity pinned down in the lower dimensional consciousness field of the first harmonic universe. Meanwhile, the AI governed mind-controlled, mind-sliding holographic inserts program of self-destructive impulses being constantly streamed upon humanity as to generate a phantom of reality structure experiencing the sojourns of life facilitated their nefarious agenda of extracting and harvesting low frequential essence of our consciousness, referred to as loosh, feeding their ferocious parasitic vampiric appetites and their AI machinery, with much more left as spare to be stored in the Moloch tanks. In essence, their reptilian negative aliens with their incredible negative polarity proclivity are the designers and creators of the concept of duality that infers the intermixing of AI phantom reality representing evil and natural organic epitomizing divine. And the underlying factor that keeps the system together is the advent of ego with a slant towards negativity. And only humans must know this very well, that by giving away negative ego, they submit to pain, suffering, and misery that ensues the success of negative aliens, parasitic, vampiric, feeding upon us, as these low frequencies also accompanied with anger, violence, conflict, prejudice, such that also serve the nefarious divide and conquer strategy of the negative aliens through warmongering. Thus, the first lessons arising from a wise trend of thoughts and feeling guides us to let go of the negative ego. At the same time, the life sojourns are imbued with trial and error conducts that serve to learn the proper lessons. Thus, one has always engaged in self-love and adopt an attitude of self-acceptance with regard to what we experience through thinking and emotional endeavors. And this attitude of letting go and allowance is particularly important nowadays as we are going through highly challenging times and highly complex process that we refer to as ascension. In essence, proverbially, we are not in Kansas anymore. Accordingly, we now finding that everything that we have presumed to know in the past was either false or is transforming. And in this incredibly trying times in which both our physical bodies and emotional psychological states are undergoing severe metamorphosis, we must learn to particularly take care of two important things. Number one, our nervous system, and number two, our immune system. Thus, it is of paramount importance that we particularly take care of our bodies. That serves as a temple for our consciousness. They say love heals all things, and this is indeed the most fundamental truth. The frequency of love with its potent energetics neutralizes all negativities, such as those that lead to anger, unresolved issues that in turn are the culprit for all self-destructive traits, leading to hatred, futile prejudice, violence, conflicts, and even war, which are all impetuouses for producing which love is also the neutralizer of such low negative frequential energies, such as anxiety, fear, and dread, that compels one to engage in all forms of self-destructive conducts. Thus, practice loving kindness with all your heart. That is every true inner essence of your Christos, angelic being. It appears that many are currently plagued or inundated with fear that darkness is befalling the earth and taking control of the world. This could not be further from the truth. In fact, this planet has been long through the darkness and is only now that the light is truly shining in the horizon. As we become more spiritually awakened, we are more able to appreciate this truth that is now surfacing and revealing itself. Only you need to develop your consciousness to bring it up to this level. Oh, pardon me, the mouse went. Only you need to develop your consciousness to bring it up to this level, that through your enhanced light quotient, you'll be able to readily see the truth. In contrast, when you're plagued with negative ego and engage in futile negative thoughts and derailed feelings, this truth becomes covered in thick cloud of darkness. Pardon me. The key issue is to teach yourself to have faith in order to be able to exercise patience and gain perseverance so that you have clarity and can observe all that is before you through a shining light. And love is the light that is synonymous with the acumen of God. And that's the end of part 2 of Criterion for Continued Life and Ascension. Humans and non-humans quarantined and not ascending upon physical death. Well, that's a huge paper, and it's a lot for people who may not be aware of a lot of what is being said to absorb. So I even had some trouble, with some of the words. I get tongue-tied sometimes, but, I don't give myself a hard time because it just is like that. This idea that we should be so self-conscious all the time, it's just another horrible gift from the negative aliens. We don't have to be perfect. We can make mistakes and we can be okay with it. We don't have to do everything to perfection. Of course, it will be wonderful, but it's not always possible. And because we're dealing with so much at the moment, I think it's important to allow yourself to just be you. Be who you are today, because you're changing every single day, especially right now. The changes that are happening to us all are amazing and wonderful and difficult and all of those things together. But I encourage you all to do self-love practice each day. That means taking care of your body and taking care of what you do with your body, what you put into your body, and spending time in nature. Just even sitting down on the ground on a nice day and just be one with nature. And remember who you are, and go inside and love all the parts of yourself that you feel you can't face anymore or you don't like. You can't change anything unless you love it. And that's really true. when you take your time and your care with someone you really love, you really feel good. You feel the benefit for that, for looking after someone else. Well, we all need to also apply that to ourselves each day. And it's an essential practice, as Mohsen described there in the last part of this paper, that we must look after our bodies and realize that all these horrible feelings we have, they're not ours. They're nothing like what we truly are. What we truly are loving, divine beings. And there is so much light coming our way now that if we want, that we can transform ourselves, because it's right there for us. But we need to first acknowledge the difficulties we have and take our time each day to practice self-care and self-love, as well as taking care of your home, as well as taking care of other people you love, as well as taking care of animals you might care for. You're also very, very important, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. So I'm going to leave it there today. Just thank Mohsen again for this paper. It's a very important paper, as they all are. And I'm wishing you all well. And please, please stay connected to your heart. Brightest blessings.